Welcome to the Well Woman Show, where we interview women executives, leaders, and entrepreneurs.
And you're listening to the Well Woman Show,
where motivated women achieve fulfillment and well-being.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
Take time for myself by coming to things like Well Woman drinks.
To be accepting of myself no matter what. Step away from judgment as much as possible.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
You're going to be in for a good ride. I don't regret anything. Everything I've ever done, I've learned from it, one way or another, good or bad.
Being a little bit selfish for yourself, put your own oxygen mask on first and then give what's left.
I'm a woman. I would prefer to tell my own story. My story, though it's very personal, is universal.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show. And now your host, Giovanna Rossi.
Hi, Giovanna Rossi here, and welcome to another episode of the Well Woman Show, where I interview women leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs about their lives and their road to becoming and being who they are today. Do you ever find yourself overwhelmed with your responsibilities, and it seems like you'll never get it all done? Well, you're not alone. We all need to remember to use our superpowers, the ones we already have but don't use all the time, and take advice and wisdom from one another. Towards the end of the show, in a segment called Superpowers for Success, I ask my guest about her superpowers, and the answers will give you the strength, perspective, and power to keep on being the well woman you are. I'm so happy you're here, so thanks for tuning in. The Well Woman Show is sponsored by Better Money Decisions, headed by two awesome women, Kate and Lorraine, who put your interests first when it comes to your money. They make sure your plan and your investments are tailored just for you. No financial jargon, no Wall Street double talk. Go to bettermoneydecisions.com/wellwoman to get their new book for free. Today's topic is how to lead by connecting and supporting your community. And hopefully by the end of the show, you'll be inspired to rethink how you're connecting with and building community, understand your leadership capacity, and recommit to diversity while building community and leadership. My guest today is Pamela Slim, an award-winning author, speaker, and leader in the new world of work. In this episode, Pam and I talk about how to focus on what a community needs rather than what you can offer and why this is important, her tips for applying successful community organizing tactics to a business, and why it's important to have diversity in leadership positions and how you can encourage this to happen. Pamela suggests that we look at community building from the perspective of the community members, saying, you always want to ask who is here, who is not here, why aren't they here? And what can we do in order to make them feel more welcome? The free giveaway today is my free Crafting Your Leadership Identity worksheet. That was actually a freebie from a previous show, from a previous guest. But since we're staying on the topic of leadership, I thought I would offer it again. I really like this giveaway because it's a real quick guide to understanding and creating your own leadership style. So you can download it for free at wellwomanlife.com/069show. And if you're new to the show, I want to welcome you. If you are returning, I want to welcome you back. It's great to connect with you. I'd love to connect with you more and hear what you're working on in your own life over at the free Facebook group where we're having a continued conversation about what it means to live a well woman life. You can find that at wellwomanlife.com/Facebook and just request to join and I will add you and we can continue the conversation there. I'd love to chat with you. Now to my interview with Pamela Slim. I'm speaking with Pamela Slim this morning. Welcome to the program, Pamela.
Thanks for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
I would love to start with, let's have you tell our listeners a little bit about what you're working on and how it impacts women's lives and well-being.
Well, that requires me to focus. I'm like, I'm working on so many fun things, but probably the central thing that's been really significant in my life and my family's life recently is I opened up a small business incubator on Main Street in my hometown of Mesa, Arizona. And there was a lot of thought that came behind doing that. I've had a virtual business for many years, but I really have been called to do a lot of work specifically in the community and getting to know people face to face. I serve folks of all genders and backgrounds, but I think as a woman, as somebody who is wanting to actively be showing to my kids my my own body of work and the work that I do and have them very integrated into what we're doing, it feels like a really significant opportunity. And I think in particular, in some of the things that I've seen, there's a place for all kinds of different centers and incubators and things for business owners. But what I found, especially here in the Phoenix area, is that sometimes folks who may not fit a traditional profile for whatever reason, maybe it's somebody who's coming back into the workforce as a mom, or maybe it's a person of color that's in a predominantly, white neighborhood, or somebody who doesn't come from a tech background that's, doing a startup. And in many cases, people don't really feel welcome and included. And that's really something that we're really wanting to do, is to have a very interesting mix in terms of economic backgrounds and different neighborhoods and different life experiences. And it's just been a true joy to be doing.
That's so cool. And it's so funny because you're going back to basics, like meeting people in person, right?
Right? Imagine that.
Yeah, that just makes me laugh. So many people are going online and you're going offline. I mean, not that you're going offline because you're also doing things, virtually, but you're really focusing on your community and having a brick and mortar building with a business incubator in your community. So that's very interesting to me. What made you decide to do that?
I think there's a lot of factors that contributed to it. Probably the thing that got me thinking the most about it was in the fall of 2015. I did a 25-city tour that I just self-organized, teaching community building skills to entrepreneurs around the U.S. And then we had Vancouver also. I just hopped over the border quickly to Canada. And in that experience, which was really fun, it was a early research for the book that I'm working on, and it was a chance. It's been a long time since I'd really been out on the road. I think the last significant time was at my first book tour for Escape from Cubicle Nation in 2009. So just going to physically visiting a lot of different communities and seeing what people were doing, especially in Fargo, North Dakota, is a place I've gone a number of times, and I just was so inspired at seeing what a huge cross-section of people were doing in their local community in order to be stimulating economic growth, but then also a lot of community growth. And one of the conversations I had that just really stopped me was when I was in Fargo and I was meeting with the head of the Arts Commission and somebody from the mayor's office and folks from the startup community and the city planner. And we're all talking about the growth of what's happening in Fargo. And they just mentioned all kinds of specific things that they were doing to help grow business. But then they said, what can we really do to encourage kindness, to make it where everybody really feels this, welcome and kindness. And it struck me like, wow, we're having this conversation in the middle of a town, for people who are generally focused on economic development. But this to me is what we need to be talking about. This is how we look at how we utilize the strengths of small business, which is all about community and knowing your neighbor. And it doesn't have to be just in a local way. There's also ways that can emanate other places. So that for me, my degree in college was international service and development. So I've always had a community development background. Early in my 20s, I ran a nonprofit for capoeira, an Afro-Brazilian martial art in the Bay Area where I'm from. So I did tons of work in San Francisco for 10 years of cultivating community, and especially with youth. We had a whole youth program. So it's just like there's a lot of things to me that felt like going back to my roots. And so that, I think, was a driver to be wanting to contribute to my local community. The other thing that was very significant for me, as you know, because we know each other, is my husband is Navajo, and so our kids are Navajo, Dene, and Anglo. And one of the questions that I was asking when I was going on the road in all those different cities is how many people have ever seen a Native American business speaker speaking as an expert in business, not as entertainment or some kind of cultural education, but really somebody who's speaking as a business owner. And there were 7 people out of all the 25 cities and probably 800 or so people who were participating. And so as a parent of Native American children, I thought, wow, how are my kids actively seeing examples of thriving people from all backgrounds. I mean, it's not that everybody has to be in business, but there are many, many, many amazing Native American business owners, because my husband was one of them for many years, and I met so many of his peers. And I just thought there is no visibility, and especially for the younger folks who are coming up, where they can look and see their elders who are on stage in positions of leadership. And so instead of complaining about it, right, and just noticing that it was absent, I thought, okay, here's something that I can do here locally. I can really be creating an environment, which we do collectively as a family with a lot of my husband's participation and engagement, where especially Native American folks here in the Phoenix area, of which there are many, many, feel very welcome, and where we can be celebrating who they are. We can invite other folks from the community in order to be, engaging, so that people have an awareness. It's just like this invisible thing that, there's a reason for it. It's not by accident that many Native American folks are invisible. When you start to look at the history of our country and, some of the pillars of white supremacy, and, there's a lot of things that kind of try to erase the history. And it's just not, we don't need to do that. We can be actively looking at history and aware of what that is. And then we can also be celebrating the tremendous gifts of people who are here now.
Yeah. And it does take a proactive, intentional approach, which is what you're doing. It doesn't just, happen. You can't just rely on like someone else to take care of it, or like you said, like complain about it. It takes people like you and your family actually addressing it and intentionally creating that opportunity. So is your incubator focused on Native Americans, or is it sort of open to everybody, but you have a big Native American population, so that's who comes?
Yeah, it's open to everybody. So I don't know if you've read Shonda Rhimes' latest book, I think The Year of Yes. I loved it. I have so many books in my nightstand that I don't ever read completely, and I just devoured that from beginning to end. And I love what she was saying about, instead of talking about, diversifying things or, diversity, inclusion, all really important words. However, she just talks about normalizing. Like, we actually want to create something that just normalizes who is actually here. So our vision for what it is we have here in this community is to normalize representing who actually is here in the community. So here in Mesa, that includes many Latino business owners and African American business owners and Native American business owners, and Mormon business owners. We have a big LDS community who's here. There's just people from all different backgrounds, Asian business owners, and just the way that the community is structured historically, there doesn't tend to be, people kind of stay within their neighborhoods, and you can understand there's a lot of reason why there's real health and growth that happens when people are focused in their own communities with their own communities. So it's not replacing that. But what we want to do is really just get to know people, get to know our neighbors, and make sure that we're providing. There's all these different ways in which you can start to understand and diagnose why is it that people who live in communities may not be showing up and participating, on Main Street. Why is it that they may not be participating in some opportunities that are there in terms of small business training or networking and all of that. And usually I found in my exploration, there's a lot of really deep, good reasons for that. And the only way to really find out is by beginning to reach out and build relationships and understand, what's happening in different communities, what's important to people. So one of the things that's been a really fun part of this whole experience, because I do have this, I look at it like this learning laboratory. We have this local learning laboratory where we're doing events. I also have my global audience that I've been connected to for a long time that I love to serve, of business owners all over the place. That's also a very diverse audience. But, part of doing the local work is I didn't want to show up on the street and be like, okay, here we are and here's all of our programming, because it goes against all the principles that I learned as a community organizer.
Yeah.
You want to first get to know, who are you? What's important to you? What do you need? Where are some of the gaps? There's already a lot of other great people here who are offering services. So I've met so many people from different sectors of the city where we're figuring out collectively, what's needed, what's the role that that I can best play. And then the process too has been in inviting and hosting events, just that some of them may not seem to have a direct relationship with business. We hosted the Dinesh Shoe Games, so it's something in the winter time that you do a lot within the Navajo Nation, which was this wonderful event where we had all kinds of folks who were coming for that cultural event. And again, that's so much more of an integrated way in which people tend to look at things, because as we were hosting that and I was making, pots of coffee and talking to people, that's when I was having these conversations with people. And like, oh yeah, I have this side business, or I do graphic design, or, I do jewelry, or I'm, a teacher wanting to develop a product. And so it was having that connection that we began to really discover what people needed. So, it's going to be a long process in building those relationships. But to me, it's this combination of, listening to what it is that the community wants. And then my favorite thing is in introducing people to each other, helping people to see some of this cross section of communities where they may find they have more in common than not.
Yeah, I love that, because it's sort of like if you just held an event saying, if you want to start a business, come here and we'll talk about it. A lot of people won't identify as a person wanting to or being able to start a business, so they won't go to that event. So kind of getting to it through something that they're already doing, which is the cultural, the game day that you did, makes a ton of sense to accessing, and making that connection. And I also have a community organizing and sort of nonprofit background, so this is definitely resonating. And it makes me think of when I started the Well Woman show and Well Woman Drinks, which is the event that goes along with it. It really started as a way to have some of these conversations in person in the community. And it was interesting because I would bring women together for a sort of a happy hour, deep connection time with each other. And it wasn't sort of like, come to this event if you want to be a leader or if you want to do XYZ. It was just come and let's connect. And then all of these things have come out of it, like new businesses and people, making major changes in their lives. And it's been a great place to kind of focus group those things and topics and issues that women are thinking about. So it's so funny, isn't it, Pamela? It's like, it's so basic, but I think people miss that basic, piece of how to connect with people and how to build something. So you're definitely doing that.
I so agree that I was having conversations with some folks about that who were working on, like a sustainable communities group was coming through here, and people from different cities across the Phoenix metro area. And it is that foundation. The name of our space is called Keh, which is a Navajo word that means system of kinship and, family. It's the feeling you get whenever you introduce yourself to another Diné person. Diné is the actual language. Navajo is a colonial name, but obviously a lot of people popularly call it Navajo. But when Diné people meet each other, they introduce themselves by clan. And it's when they see where that connection is, where they actually have that relation, is where you get that feeling of Keh. I love to watch it when I see people meet each other and then realize how specifically that they're related. And it's that feeling. It can't be manufactured. And it's a matter of really being present with someone and sharing who you are and just being welcoming. It's so simple as when somebody just comes up from the street and is curious about what's going on and they come in. How are you really making them feel fundamentally welcome? Just really seeing them, hearing them, looking in their eyes, being generous, offering water, just basic human things to make people feel comfortable. And that, I think that is ignored so much as part of what's required. A lot of the analysis that I look at as you look at strategically trying to build a community, and it's with any kind of factor. So right now we happen to be talking about maybe different types of communities that we have that are coming in a physical environment, but it could also be where you're trying to reach a certain person in business, or you're trying to attract a certain kind of customer. And you always want to ask in your business or your organization, who is here, who's not here, why aren't they here? And then what can we do in order to make them feel more welcome? And the why are they not here, that is the juicy area. Mm-hmm. And there's all kinds of assumptions we can make as to why somebody may not be there. But I think a lot of, what people need in order to feel safe and welcome and included and like it's a relevant, opportunity for them is where they do have that connection. And I think so often, as business owners, it's so normal that we get so excited and passionate about what we're doing. But it's like, hey, here I am. Here's my stuff. Don't you want it? And we forget that we don't have that yet. We don't have that relation with people. They don't really know who we are. And you can make amazing relationships online. I've met some of my deepest friends in the last, especially probably, 12, 13 years online. And, you can begin those relationships. And then when you meet in person, it's as if you've known each other for a long time. But that feeling in that relation is one, I think, that is just, it's frequently overlooked. And we just think we go right to programming or, marketing messages, and you just kind of miss the basic point. Do you actually want people there? Do you actually, do they feel welcome and do they feel safe when they're with you?
Mm. Yeah, that's such a good tip. And, I think we could take some of your community organizing tips and apply them to any business, right? Any business, especially online, because I think that's where some of this deeper connection is needed. So what would you, if you were going to give some tips for building a business, and especially answering that question, why are they not here? What tips would you give, given your, community organizing background and what you've built?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I learned, and so for me, I was a consultant to large companies for the first 10 years of my business when I started in 1996, and then starting in 2004 is when I started the Escape from Cubicle Nation business and the blog, I think in 2005. And I think the biggest thing that I learned from that, as a way of really beginning to build a great connected online community, is the focus is really on really zeroing in on who is your audience and what are the core challenges and problems that they have. And I know for Escape, one of the things that was so wonderful for me, having worked in corporate and been a consultant in corporate for so long, is I really did understand so deeply what kind of situations that people were in. And I talked about it like I was able to share with my blogging the bubble above everybody's head when they were going through their corporate life and just going through the motions and doing what you need to do to survive. But then the bubble over their head was like, oh my God, this isn't the work I'm meant to do. And I can't stand being in meetings where I can't speak my truth, and just all these different things. So It's really when you're speaking in a way that is directly talking to what people are experiencing. And I think the way is when you start to get feedback from people where they're like, oh my God, it was like, are you in my head? It's so weird. It's like, exactly what I'm thinking. And, or, like, oh my God, this book was just exactly what I needed. And I always say, I wrote it for you. I wrote it specifically for you. And that to me is that's where your own body of work becomes very significant, is where that which you are creating is something that's deeply helpful and connected for people who you want to serve. And in order to learn that, you have to really spend time with people who you want to serve and understand who they are. My friend Susan Beyer, who is a dear friend, we've been mastermind partners along with our friend Chris Lee for like the last 2.5 years. And she does a lot of work around audience definition. That's her whole focus. She does research, and then she does this audience definition. And I've really taken on her zeal and her passion for saying, we're so used to describing our audience in terms of demographics, right? So women between the age of 25 and 55 that live in, New York. And that doesn't really tell us much at all about what kind of specific problems or challenges that our audience has. So if I was just having all my marketing, are you between the age of 25 to 35 and you're working in corporate, did not resonate at all as much as saying, do you feel like you are in a corporate job and you're really dying to get out and start a business? And, I had clients that were in their early 20s and clients that were in their late 60s across every demographic range that you could imagine that were relating to those messages. So there's first spending time and understanding who your audience is and in-person time and listening to them and reading what's important to them and having conversations. And then there is creating marketing messages that deeply resonate with that. And I think there's something which has been, it's an understandable, but I think sometimes unfortunate trend with online marketing and online branding, where we've really shared the message that it's about you highlighting your expert status, right? And what's so great about you and really like building this own empire so that people are attracted to you. One of the messages that I really thought was important in body of work is that it's really not about you. It's about what is that work that you're doing? What are some of those problems that you're solving? And who are you solving it for? And you happen to be the medium through which that work comes. But if it just becomes about you, then it's a really hollow message. And I realize I have a point of view about that, and everybody has different approaches to work, which is why there's space in the field for many different people, right?
Yeah.
My view comes from, my job is to build the leadership capacity of the people who I work with. So if I create somebody dependent and starstruck on working with me because I have some, mythical profile and expertise, that they're really abdicating their own responsibility. They're not feeling their own power. They're looking to a mentor as somebody who has all the answers. And I just don't believe that on any level. Everybody has their own sovereignty and self-determination and power. And it's my job as a mentor to be helping to bring that out to where they can really feel it for themselves, right? They're growing their own community. So those are some of the things I think that end up, it can seem a little bit esoteric, but it actually is quite significant because so many people are getting messages about, your personal brand and, I understand we need to have clear messages. We need to be showing up in a positive, powerful way for people to see us and want to work with us. But it's not just about getting views.
Well, don't you think that sometimes certain things in business and marketing are sort of latched onto, and then they, it's taken to an extreme. And so this is making me think of the whole know, like, and trust. Like, what you're referring to is basically, marketers out there saying you've got to get your people to know you and like you, and so then it's all about you. And you're saying, well, no, it's not all about you. And so I feel like they've taken that note, you've got to know you, they have to know you, like you, and trust you in order to build that audience. And yeah, that's important, but we don't need to only focus on that and building this, sort of hollow, shallow, fake profile like you're referring to.
Yeah, well, it goes two ways. We have to know, like, and trust the people who we're working with, right? And really spend that time. It's as much about them and our understanding of them. It's reciprocal. And that's where we can really be honoring each other in that way, right? Of really like seeing people and being excited by it. And that to me is where the most amazing, just enjoyable transformational work happens, is where you really are like, you're celebrating each other's strengths. I always say we all need each other. It's really hard to be going through this whole experience individually. And so there's times that it's so helpful to have each other, but like it's as reciprocal when I get off a coaching call or, teaching a workshop or whatever it is, like I can just be on a high. Like it's so creatively enjoyable to have that experience of in the just watching and being a participant with somebody as it is that they're doing their work and showing up, it's so exciting and meaningful. And that's because you're in that process of creation together, and where it can just start to get tough, and people are motivated by different things. So that's not for everybody. That's not always the core of what it is. I know for me, like that's where it's at. I'm not excited by what it is that I'm creating or the work being created by clients. It's hard just to go through the motions, in order to make money, just for me. But I think for a lot of people, if it just does become about the numbers of people, right? How many people in your audience and what's the conversion? Or I see people, sometimes behind the scenes like, oh, it was awesome. I closed like 40% of that audience. If you go and give a talk and then you're pitching from the stage or something. There's nothing wrong with being passionate about what it is that you offer. And if you're in a place that's a watering hole for ideal clients and many people choose to work with you, like that's awesome. Like that's what we want. But looking at it from this metric perspective, like, I close this percentage of people, for me, it just starts to feel really off. Like, what does that mean? And what is that criteria then from an ethical perspective and from a values perspective? If you're really in relationship with people, it's not that you're closing them, it's that you're both excited to work with each other. So sometimes it's a matter of semantics.
Yeah.
I find it has all these ripples and implications when we're only looking at the metrics and the measurements. Because then I just had a event here last night with a woman, Kendra Tillman, who was talking about comparison and how that gets. It's such a difficult thing for a lot of entrepreneurs where they're going to start to compare themselves to others. And that's what ends up happening. I've talked to so many people who by all accounts are like massively successful. And yet they're just looking at the metrics like, but look, there's this other person who has more or has more visibility or who's been on Oprah or whatever it is. And I'm just like, oh man, after a while, what kind of quality of life is that? Where's the joy in actually doing your own work?
Right. I want to ask you a question, another question, and then we'll go into the final segment, the superpowers for success segment. But I just want to ask you, you've worked with so many hundreds and probably thousands of entrepreneurs and business leaders. What do you see as a sort of common challenge that entrepreneurs or leaders at any stage, really? I'm trying to get at, it's not just when you're beginning, but it's challenges that leaders have when they've been in business for a long time. Is there something that you see that's a sort of a common thread or challenge?
Yeah, there's a bunch of things. We're actually just launching a big North America research study on this exact thing. So I'm going to be able to give you like massively cool data.
Oh, cool.
In a couple of months around this. I can't wait to share. But a lot of the things that I've seen directly are on one hand, obstacles and challenges are my friend Mark Otto, who's a client, and also he's doing work with me now. We're kind of like cross coaching each other, but he often talks about the challenge of having to become somebody different. Like we're all our essence, right? We're ourselves, but you need to significantly behave differently sometimes as you're making the transition from what makes you a successful corporate employee to entrepreneur in the early stage, right? There's, hustle and movement and just building and grinding and all of that, right? That's essential for the early stages. As you go through different stages of business, you need to have that capacity to really look at what does my business need? What kind of behavior is going to be important for me as a leader in my business in order to be, taking on certain challenge. And I think many people, maybe most people, have a challenge with being uncomfortable. We kind of feel like, God, this should be easier. Why is it that it's so hard? Or I don't want to be in this uncomfortable position where I don't know exactly what I'm doing, or I'm constantly in evolution and growth. So I think it's that people who are able to have that self-awareness and then just learn and practice ways to just take action, even if they're feeling uncomfortable, is definitely one of those secret sauces. If there's any secret, it's not really a secret, but it's a quality and an ability to recognize that there is so much discomfort that you need to be willing to embrace. And over time, it actually becomes a joyful experience. It's not like it's always hard and awful, but you never stay still as your business is growing. Then you have to really grow with it as a leader. And I think that's probably the biggest piece that people might struggle with.
Yeah, that's so true. And I just think it's so interesting that, I speak with so many women leaders and entrepreneurs and executives for this show. And from the very beginners to the people who have published, 40 best-selling books, there are these common challenges. And it's just so interesting. And I really want women to know that it's not just them, and it's not just to not feel so isolated in these challenges that, even people who have been on Oprah or have all these best-selling books also have these huge, huge challenges. I was interviewing a woman who is, Julia Cameron, the author of The Artist's Way. She was like, I get worried that I don't have another book in me. And it's like, what? She's got all these string of hugely successful books. And so even she, talked about that challenge and so part of what we're doing on this show is really trying to address that and offer some solutions and strategies for getting through those times when that happens, when we feel stuck or challenged. So I'll be very interested to see your research and to follow up on that.
I know, I can't wait. And maybe if there are folks in your community who want to participate, I can definitely send you a link, because I'm just trying to get as far and wide as possible where we can really, to me, this is the juicy part as a coach and as somebody interested in business, is that, there's a billion trillion pieces of information and classes on all the stuff that we all know we should be doing. But the real interesting thing is, why aren't we doing it?
Yeah.
And how can we help each other, to do it? I mean, it's so fascinating too, just looking at that discomfort level in particular with women, and not all women have children, but for those that do, I know from my own experience, when I gave birth for the first time, I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, billions of women have gone through this experience. It was the most intense, incredible, painful, challenging, amazing experience, that when you look at that, what it is that we know from all the joy that can come from birth and, having kids, and then everything about it, it's this whole big, rich experience that involves so many things. I mean, that's the creative process. That's parenting, that's childbirth. And so it's so funny that we look at some isolated thing. We're supposed to have this blueprint for success, and we just start our business and everything is great. I mean, that's not really the creative process. And anywhere that I see it in nature or, any other part of really what makes us human.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is a good segue to the Superpowers for Success segment. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and we'll sort of run through it a little bit at a little faster pace so we can get through all of them. Before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor. One of the top issues women tell me they struggle with is finances, which is why I want you to call my friends at Better Money Decisions. The company is owned by women, Lorraine L. and Kate Stalter, and they make sure your plan and your investments are tailored just for you. They're fiduciaries and put your interests first. No financial jargon, no Wall Street double talk. Also, they have a gift for Well Woman Show listeners. Their free book, Don't Let Your Money Kick the Bucket Before You Do. And it's all about the need to manage your money for a long life expectancy. You can download the entire book at bettermoneydecisions.com/wellwoman. And you'll also get a free portfolio diagnostic, so you can tell if your investments are right for you. Just go to bettermoneydecisions.com/wellwoman. And the first question is, what does success in life mean for you?
Enjoy my life while I am living it.
Okay, love that. And just a little bit more on that, like how?
I mean, to me, the definition assumes that I'm doing work that I love with people who I love, and I'm not chasing after, false senses of what I should be doing, that I am active and engaged and present in the work that I'm doing. And that's just at the highest level, that is the definition of success to me, that I'm enjoying it, truly enjoying it, and really fulfilling my creative potential.
And when did you know, Pamela, that you were really good at what you do?
I think, there have been times earlier on at just different points in my career, but as I think about maybe the recent, last 20 years, when I did consulting, there were times where I would go through an experience, and, one was designing a new hire orientation for a big technology company. And it was just putting tons of effort and energy into it. And then actually watching people go through it and have this amazing connected experience. I remember it was kind of an out-of-body experience of going through that and just seeing how engaged and alive people were, where you go through the process of creating something, but then actually seeing it put into implementation. And I think that's been some times where I've really felt that. And then I think on the startup Escape from Cubicle Nation side, these last 11 or 12 years, it has been in, I think, a combination of writing, in writing books and knowing that they can go out there in the world and there's people who I've never met, who have no context whatsoever, who can read the words and actually get value and take action from it. There was probably one of my favorite moments at all, because, this is not a short answer, but I'll try to shorten it. It's when I got somebody who got my book, Escape from Cubicle Nation, and didn't have the funds in order to have his own copy because he wanted to donate a copy to the library. And he showed me this picture of him walking into the library carrying his book. And I grew up as a kid without a lot of money going to the library. So my dad actually got so excited that he bought a book and he sent it to him so he could have his own copy. But that kind of thing to me was very significant.
Okay. And describe one personal habit that contributes to your well-being.
Walking in the morning. Whenever I'm able to get up early and walk, it helps everything.
Do you do that before the kids get up and all that?
Yeah, I get up at 5:30. Actually, we've started to do it together. So my kids are starting to come out with me. We did this morning. They're just motivated about it. But normally I do it at 5:30.
Oh, nice. That's great. Okay. What superpower did you discover you had only to realize it was there all the time?
That was community building. So that was an insight in doing so much, just building my online business and connection and teaching a lot of the nuts and bolts about starting a business. And then I had my best friend of 33 years, Desiree Attaway. She just reflected back to me, she's like, of course, you've always been a community builder. And it was one of those duh, that was my degree in college. So I think that's always been an interest and always been there.
Okay. So just real quick, when you say community building, let's get a little bit specific for the listeners. What are one or two or three quick things that mean that community building means? How does that look? How does that show up in your?
It is being able to get to know people and connect them with each other around a common goal, and begin to see a really vibrant, active group of people who are excited to know each other. And it happens to be through a common, through me as the person who's introducing people to each other, but it's really in helping to just have people recognize their own beauty, their own strengths, and meet other people who they may not have naturally connected with before. And then to see that group of people, my criteria is always, when I step out of the equation totally, everybody continues to really stay connected. I mean, it's not my business, what ends up happening after the connections, but there have just been numerous businesses started and friendships and business opportunities that have happened by connecting people with each other. So that's the way for me that I define community.
That's a sign of a good leader too, if you can step out and have it continue, right?
I think so, for my definition. For sure.
Yeah. Okay. And what advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
Get out of a toxic relationship now. Don't wait 5 more years.
Oh, that's a good one.
Typically what I would say to my 25-year-old self. Yeah. Don't tolerate unhealthy relationships on any level. Not worth it ever. Get out.
So can I ask you, if you don't mind, since you are bringing it up, so that must have happened to you, and then you did get out of it, and you met, your current husband, and now you have 2 kids, so it all worked out. Is that more or less the story?
That's the definite short version of the story. Yeah.
Well, I just love that.
We learn, we learn sometimes through really challenging experiences. And apparently I'm the slowest learner in the universe. It took me a while to get that one. But, now on being on the other side of it after many, many years, there definitely were huge, wonderful lessons that came from that, just clear boundaries that I was able to set. And really, the biggest thing, I think it just helped me to really appreciate and value myself and trust myself and my intuition. And sometimes we would learn the hard way, I hope, you never know. As a parent, I'm hoping that not everybody has to learn that way. I don't really wish that experience. I don't think it's the only way for us to learn. But if it does happen, then it is one of the deepest ways that we can learn.
Yeah. And I just think it's that there are so many 25 and 30-year-old and even 33 and 34 and 35-year-olds out there who are in relationships that really aren't satisfying and aren't going where they want them to go. And they think, but, I'm getting kind of, I'm a little too old to start again. And what if and all of that. And then, so they stay in the relationship. And I just would love for women to say, you know what? No, I'm going to go and it's the scariest thing ever, but I'm going to, release myself of this relationship and move on. Yes, exactly. It is. I mean, I talk to my 9-year-old daughter about it all the time, and I talk to my son about it, all the time. It is something that, we just don't need to tolerate. It's not good for anybody. We're complicit. There's always 2 people that are involved in an unhealthy relationship. It's not a one-way thing, but the same kind of patterns end up repeating themselves in business relationships and other things if you don't address it. Yeah. Okay. And then do you identify as a feminist? I do. Okay. And then final question, what are you reading right now? What's on your nightstand? I am reading a book called How to Be Everything from a friend, Emily Wapnick. So she runs a site called puttylike.com, which is all about, as she calls them, multi-potentialites, people who have multiple interests. She did an amazing TEDx talk that her name is spelled Emilie. Wapnick. It's a little bit of something to spell. Maybe we can put it in the show notes. But it's an amazing book, and I've known her for a long time before she blew up and got 3.5 million views on her TEDx talk and got a book deal. But I'm just really excited about it because many people in my community identify as multi-potentialites and people who have many interests. So I'm really excited about it and really proud of her for writing it. Oh, cool. Yeah, we'll definitely put that in the show notes. And we'll also put the link to your research in the show notes. If you want to send that to me, we can add that for sure. That would be great. Yeah, we're just getting ready to launch it right at the beginning of May. So if the timing works, that would be fantastic. Okay, good. All right. Well, Pamela, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show today. Likewise. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having me. That's it for our show today. I've been speaking with Pamela Slim, an award-winning author, speaker, and leader in the new world of work. In this episode, Pam and I talk about how to focus on what a community needs rather than what you can offer, her tips for applying successful community organizing tactics to a business, and why it's important to have diversity in leadership positions. You can get the free Crafting Your Leadership Identity worksheet at wellwomanlife.com/069show. Before I sign off, I want to let you know that this year's Superpower Retreat will be in late October in New Mexico in beautiful Santa Fe. So save the date, October 26th and 27th. And check out wellwomanlife.com/retreat for more information. We will be opening up the early bird tickets pretty soon, so keep your eye on that. And if you haven't ever come to Well Woman Drinks, I want to encourage you to come. It's a lot of fun. We bring women together to share our successes and challenges as women, leaders, moms, aunts, sisters, and all the other roles we carry. If you want to attend a Well Woman Drinks near you and there isn't one in your city yet, do contact me at info@wellwomanlife.com and we'll help you organize your own Well Woman Drinks. If you enjoy the show, please take a moment and subscribe in iTunes and leave a review. That really helps me when I go to be producing the show every week for you. Or you can head over to patreon.com/wellwomanshow to support the show with a monthly contribution. That's patreon.com/wellwomanshow. And definitely join me over in the Facebook group for more conversation and connection at wellwomanlife.com/Facebook. For feedback, comments, or just to let me know you were listening today, find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Well Woman Life. I'm Giovanna Rossi for The Well Woman Show. Until next time, have a super powerful week.